鉄の玉が正義の証明貫けば英雄に近づいた
When I think back on the journey I've had watching anime over the past decade or so, I still get shocked and blown away by the fact that Attack on Titan, one of the first series I ever watched, is still ongoing stronger than it ever has been. It isn't and won't ever be as long as something like One Piece, but the impact it's had on the modern anime scene is undeniable. From its wildly unpredictable storyline to its music, some of which I'm sure helped make the name Sawano Hiroyuki a household name for anime fans the world over. And while the musical themes of the series have changed drastically to match the atmosphere of the seasons they accompanied, every single one has managed to capture a distinct part of what makes Attack on Titan what it is. So let's delve into one of the songs that manages to explore the themes of everything that will lead the series into its final arc. 2020 marked a drastic turning point for Attack on Titan, both for its story as well as its production. The change from Studio Wit to MAPPA, not to mention the impact of COVID, meant big changes from what viewers had come to expect, and also brought along with it changes to fit the huge narrative shift in the story. Sawano's exciting and powerful soundtrack was now being mixed with the dramatic orchestrations of Yamamoto Kota's compositions, Revo's rock opera bangers are long behind us, and the actual opening and ending themes took on a completely different character. Shinsei Kamatte-chan's Boku no Senso acted like a subversion of Guren no Yumiya, serving as a bridge to the much more intense and explosive second opening, The Rumbling by Sim. And while Attack on Titan has had songs on the calmer end of things in the past, none were quite so heavy as Ando Yuko's Shogeki, which, like the opening, would also serve as a bridge to bring us the much heavier Akuma no Ko, Devil Child. Composed and performed by Higuchi Ai, the song opens sparsely in B minor, her vocals accompanied only by a simple piano and harp line. The harmonies, outlined by the piano, feature a chromatic walking bass line from B to C sharp, giving the music an unresolved creeping feeling, as if we're meant to be crawling towards some kind of destination, only to find ourselves going in circles. A recorder comes in shortly after, adding in a lighter timbre while still following the unsettling atmosphere of the rest of the ensemble.
その目を閉じて触れてみれば同じ形同じ体温の悪魔
Taking a look and hearing the musical line, it's clear that while the recorder is playing to match the harmonies, its line is soloistic and improvisational, freely flying above the darker elements below it. This specific bird-like metaphor is quite important to the series as a whole, as we'll explore a little more once we get into the lyrics. The first two lines immediately introduce the listener to the current state of Attack on Titan's world. Opening with Tetsu no tama ga seigi no shoumei, an iron bullet is proof of justice. This is followed by whenever I shot, I got closer to the hero. As straightforward as this line might seem, it is actually general and metaphorical enough that it can be attributed to just about any of the characters. The most on-the-nose example would be Gabby, whose initial goal was to kill the people of Paradi Island, cementing herself as a hero among the Eldians living in Marley. I got closer to the hero can also be interpreted more literally, with Gabby sneaking onto the airship and killing Sasha in an attempt to strike at Eren, whom she perceives as a hero to her enemies. On the flip side, we can look at this from Eren's perspective, with the bullet being symbolic of the means to an end and what eventually morphs into his genocidal ambitions. The sparseness of these heavy words over a creeping accompaniment has us thinking of these as the ideals the characters carry, nothing more than thoughts and ideas that haven't yet come to fruition. This is actually how the song as a whole seems to function, placing us in the headspace of the characters instead of actually showing us what's to come and the epic scale on which it will occur, as heard in the opening. When the freely flowing recorder comes in, it is accompanied by the lines If you close your eyes and touch it, the devil's shape and temperature are the same as mine. This is a clear statement on the nature of the warring factions, and that despite how they perceive each other as the antagonistic cause for all of their suffering, they are all victims of circumstance that, at the end of the day, are still humans that are more more alike than they are different. To have the recorder come in here serves as a sort of realization for the characters, an even higher ideal of potential peace that they are too blind, stubborn, or proud to strive for any longer. And so it remains floating above the ensemble, always there as a potential path to follow, but one that will never force itself upon those unwilling to take that first step.
その目を閉じて触れてみれば同じ形同じ体温の悪魔
The next few lines have the piano adding in a lower octave to the chromatic bass line, giving the music a much heavier feel that pulls us away from the recorder. The vocals also begin harmonizing in parallel fifths, giving the music a darker quality like that of ritualistic chanting. These standard acoustic elements are also supplemented by a wash of ringing sounds, building in volume and intensity as the song continues onwards.
僕はダメってあいつはいいのそこに壁があっただけなのに生まれてしまう
It's not exactly clear what these synthesized and reversed chimes are supposed to represent, though this confusion in itself makes a fair amount of sense as it obscures the musical lines, making it slightly unclear which, if any, we should be following outside of just the vocals. For anyone following along with the narrative, this should be a fairly obvious parallel to how the storyline isn't meant to have us rooting for anyone in particular, but rather to see how these characters will reach the end of their seemingly endless conflict. The actual lyrics continue to be ambiguous enough to apply to any number of characters with 僕はダメであいつはいいのそこに壁があっただけなのに Am I not good enough? Are they better? There was only a wall. Personally, the first character that springs to mind for me is Zeke, having failed to control the founder Ymir after Eren wrests her from his control, taking the founding titan for himself to carry out his plan of global genocide. All that separated Zeke and Eren were the sides of the wall they stood on, and yet the oppression felt inside the walls proved to hold the stronger ideals in the eyes of the founder. Again, this is only my condensed interpretation, as we can easily apply these words to any one of the Eldians from both Marley and Paradi.
僕はダメってあいつはいいのそこに壁があっただけなのに生まれてしまう
The next few lines continue with 生まれてしまった定め嘆くな僕らはみんな自由なんだから Don't lament the destiny we were born with because we are all free. This seems to be the collective Eldian mindset, with Eren and Zeke taking the lead in their own ways to see their freedom become a reality, albeit in extremely opposing ways.
自由なんだから鳥のように羽が
From here, the music shifts from the slow creeping feeling of the chromatic bass line into a faster flowing pattern on the piano. With the entrance of the strings, we also start to get some more definitive chord progressions, pushing the music forward so that we have moved beyond the creeping narrative verse into a richer melodic section where things have been set in motion. This starts with a simple 6-5-1-4-3 motion, going B minor 7, A, D major 7, D add 9 over G, A minor 7 add 4 over F sharp. The last chord of which is extremely crunchy and really nicely sets us up for the return to B minor 7 in the next bar.
どこへだって行けるけど
This chord progression also nicely sandwiches the brighter major chords within the minor chords, giving it an uplifting feeling despite starting and ending on darker harmonies. Taking what I said earlier about being in the headspace of the characters, we can interpret this as the characters striving for a brighter future while trapped within the dystopia of their war-torn world. They all have different ideas of what the right path forward is, but to each of them, that path will lead to a future where they can live in peace without fear of death and destruction. The lyrics for this pre-chorus section start us off with 鳥のように羽があればどこへだって行けるけど If we have wings like birds, we can go anywhere, referencing birds in a more direct way than the recorder's free-flowing melody could. Birds have always been an important symbol in Attack on Titan, the opening shot of the very first episode showing the geese flying above the walls, as well as the birds shown flying above the battlefield in the opening moments of the final season. Birds are also a symbol of freedom for the characters bound to the confines of their homes, whether it is the literal walls protecting the islanders from the Titans or the societal oppression and segregation of the Eldians in Marley. This also carries over to the wings of freedom emblazoned on the scout regiment's cloaks, a representation of their desire to see what is beyond the walls. And if it wasn't obvious enough for many of those examples, then Falco's Jaw Titan couldn't make it any clearer. Following this, we get 帰る場所がなければきっとどこへも行けない. But if we don't have a place to return to, we can't go anywhere. Now that things are in motion and the characters can more freely move about the world, they realize their homelands are at risk once they leave. If the Eldians leave Marley, a single wrong wrong move could result in retaliation from either side. Across the sea, the islanders now realize that the threat keeping them at bay is much greater than the Titans ever were, and the world itself is ready to eliminate them if they show any signs of leaving. The tragic irony of the situation isn't lost within the music, as this is also the section where the strings and vocals open up into their most emotional and beautiful lines. And then it all cuts out as the line "tada tada ikiru no yada" is sung, meaning I don't just want to live, a clear indication of the character's feelings that living in a prison isn't living at all. Having most of the instruments cut out here gives it a pleading sound, as if her singing is a prayer that quickly awakens into a full-fledged dream soon after, as the strings and drums build into a powerful blast for the chorus. The chorus is also a sudden and explosive shift into B major, filled out with brass to completely erase all semblance of the darkness we were stuck in as we move around the 4, 5, 6, and occasional 1 chords. Like before, this tonal shift seems more like a representation of the character's mindsets than the actual events of the series, as this major section can serve as a perfect world they envision when the fighting is over and peace has been achieved. It doesn't matter specifically how any of them reach this stage, only that they feel uplifted by the idea of a free world. To fit along with this idea, the first lines of the chorus are "Sekai wa zankoku da, soredemo kimi o aisu yo." The world is cruel, but I still love you. This seems more specifically tied to certain characters than the previous lines, though it's possible that it isn't actually tied to any of them, as most anisongs tend to have lyrics that are general enough to stand on their own as regular songs you could hear on the radio in Japan. I think the most obvious character people will associate this with is Mikasa, but realistically this could also be any character with some sort of love or affection for one or many other people. Aaron's love for the Eldians, Falco's love for Gabi, Grisha's love for his family, Armin's, and by extension Bertold's love for Annie, Connie's platonic love for Sasha, Sasha's love for food, the list goes on. This carries over into the following lines about sacrificing everything to protect the one they love as well. Where the music and lyrics come together perfectly to sync with the story's narrative again is in the final part of the chorus. Moving in wave-like motions to illustrate the ups and downs they will face, the final lyrics of the 90-second version are "Machigai da to shite mo utagattari shinai. Tarashisa to wa jibun no koto tsuyoku shinjiru koto da." Even if this is a mistake, I won't doubt it. What is right is strongly believing in myself. As anyone caught up on the series knows, the characters are constantly doubting themselves, second-guessing their decisions, and suspicious of nearly everyone around them. To that end, the ones who are getting things done are those who push beyond what they fear may be mistakes, even if their decisions seem terrible to others. How the music plays in here is with a simple chord progression of E major 7, G sharp minor, E major 7, D sharp minor 7, C sharp minor 7, F sharp 7, B minor, a 4-6-4-3-2-5-1. These are all fairly straightforward chords, with the strings running around for a few flowing embellishments, but ultimately this is also the perfect way for the music to transition back into the key of B minor, the key we initially started in. By building up the emotional lyrical lines and extending the phrase by an extra 2 beats, this classic 2-5-1 progression lands on the tonic chord and is able to perfectly switch from B major to B minor without clever implementation of secondary dominance. In simpler terms, by keeping the song in B the entire time, the transitions can feel drastic while still being simple enough to keep a form of continuity. An extremely important quality when considering that if the piece is meant to represent mindsets over actual actions, keeping the entire song grounded in one overarching key serves to show this constant within the ever-changing world. And to fully cement this idea and lead us out of the song, the outro finishes out with a return to the piano and harp, the recorder rejoining for another short soloistic line before we're suddenly cut off by a high, unresolving B minor 7 chord right at the end, leaving us hanging to await the end of the story. Akuma no Ko is a perfect example of how a relatively simple piece of music can carry a lot of meaning, using what little it presents to its fullest extent. So many of the show's themes can be drawn out of the lyrics and the music itself, probably far more than I could have even remembered to mention. Of course, everything I've mentioned is only my own interpretation, so let me know what you guys thought down in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to get your hands on a copy of the transcription I did for Akuma no Ko, or for any of the other transcriptions I've done for any of my other theme analyses, make sure to go support me over on Patreon. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.